Hey everyone, so in this video, I'm going to be commenting on the new Survivors Club information that they released on how to get Donnie, Jesus, and even Zachary. Well, maybe Zachary. So instead of pushing out a new Survivors Club toon, they've instead released Donnie, Jesus, and Zachary in exchange for a different amount of comic books. So in this video, I will go over the math needed in order to get Zachary based on the number of comic books available to us over the next 41 days. So firstly, Scopely did release weekly event missions for those who have Survivors Club. Unfortunately, there are no comic books here that you can redeem, but you can get an axe which can be used in the museum store, a war tin, and some crafting materials. So every week you can get one axe. When you have 3 axes, which takes 3 weeks, you can redeem it for 3 5-star token pulls and 1 green dinosaur. For the next museum collection, you need 7 axes and 1 green dinosaur in order to get 30 comics and 1 mask. Scopely has not yet released if there's any other way of gathering axes in order to get these additional comic books. If it's just the weekly missions, you need 10 axes, which is 10 weeks or 3 months of Survivors Club. This other collection requires the 1 mask and 11 axes, which is another 11 weeks of Survivors Club. 21 weeks of Survivors Club is equal to just over 5 months or 6 months of Survivors Club. So 5 or 6 months of Survivors Club for 5 bennies and this crown thing, which we still don't know what it's for. And then we realized that Scopely also re-released Julie a few days ago as an option to redeem extra comics for. I think they should have released all of these options at once instead of staggering them. Next we see that Donnie is now an option to redeem 45 comics for, which I think is a little ridiculous. You can get him by Ascension, you could have gotten him from past war polls, and he's been sold multiple times for about $50, but now he's redeemable for 45 comics. Next, for 50 comics, Scopely has released Shield Jesus, which is needed by any free-to-play or light spender player without a human shield. But I feel like they're just going to release Lee and Magna as soon as people are able to collect Jesus, which would then overshadow Jesus because Magna and Lee should both be at least Generation 2 6 stars. And now we look at Zach. He costs 160 comic books, but he has a timer of just under 42 days. Zach is one of the densest toons in the game. He has so much to offer with his very fast rush of 66 AP, 1000 maim damage to all, minus 20 AP up to 5 enemies, and recovering all penalties from his teammates. Besides recovering all his HP to himself and can stun an enemy for 4 turns. So at first you might go, yay, I have the opportunity to get this Zachary. But the numbers don't really add up. Firstly, Zachary is only in the museum for 42 days. This spans over 3 separate months. But this weekly mission for 15 magazines will only come into play once over the time Zachary will be available. The way this is staggered, you will get the additional 15 comics exactly 2 days after Zachary expires. So you will only get 15 comics while Zachary is in the museum. So here's some math for you. Players average 7 comics a week. Zachary was up for 6 weeks or 42 days. Because he went up mid-week and you don't need the whole week to count to get comics, you actually get 7 weeks worth of comics in the 6-week span if you have Survivors Club. 7 comics times 6 weeks plus the single week in between equals 49 comics on average. Players will also get 4 Rick statues in this time for 15 comics. The mission for 30 comics takes 11 weeks to complete due to the axes that are a weekly mission, and it's unclear if there are other ways to complete this. Zachary costs 160 comics, minus the 49 earned, minus the 15 from the Rick statues, and potentially minus 30 comics from the extra mission that is included in the museum. This means you need an additional 7 comics a week, and that would take 9.42 weeks, or let's round up to 10 weeks. 10 weeks is 2.5 months, or 3 months of Survivors Club. This is how much you would have had to save in order to get Zachary in this time frame. Now, this next scenario is very similar to the first one, except we're going to exclude the part where you can get those additional 30 comics, because those comics take technically 11 weeks if there's no other way of getting axes, and if you don't want to spend, because it's likely that Scopely will come out with some RNG bag in order to either get the axes or more comic books. And the RNG bags will probably be at a special rate for Survivor Club members. Pay $20 for a chance at getting 1 to 20 comics. So, again, under this scenario, we don't have those 30 additional comics, so you need 96 comics in order to get Zachary. Again, averaging 7 comics a week, this gives you 13.71 weeks or 14 weeks. 14 weeks is 3.5 months worth of comics, meaning you would have to save 3.5 to 4 months of comics in order to get Zachary. So Zachary does not appear to be a toon that new Survivor Club members can get, but a toon that old Survivor Club members can get. People who have saved their comics and probably didn't level up Andrea and Julie, maybe one or the other, and had good RNG luck on comic bags. So to anyone who has saved up their comics, congrats, you can probably get Zachary, and for those who can't, Jesus and Donnie are still decent toons, but it might be advisable to save for the next toon that comes out in the Survivors Club. Thank you again for watching and listening to my video. I hope this helped you with deciding whether to continue with Survivors Club or not.